Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Feathery Treasury show. My name is Aaron, and I'm joined today by my co-host Alex. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing pretty well, thanks. Lovely weather. Can't complain right now. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad myself. Enjoying the nice break in the heat. It's been pretty warm up here. Finally getting the first sense of fall. Can't wait. I'm excited.
Hoodie season is the best season.
Let's yeah, hoodie season. Love that. Let's go ahead and get into it then. We'll start off with our first segment. What have you seen lately? I'll kick us off here. So this morning, got up early, took a little bike ride down to the lake close to where I live, and right as I was pulling up to the little dock, there was a green heron wading through the mud. Always love seeing the green herons. You don't quite see them as much as the great blue herons. Was able to get a decent shot of it. Wasn't very skittish. I feel like whenever I encounter them, they tend to fly off real quick. Um, don't always get a good look at them. And I guess speaking of green herons, we a couple weeks ago we saw a juvenile green heron at work while we were eating lunch. It was a nice little surprise. Hadn't seen one there yet.
Yeah, I feel like a bit like the one you saw was in skittish. Typically, they tend to move, and this guy was definitely not as nervous as they usually are. He's just kind of picking around, and without binoculars, it was hard to identify him. But I think it was the dark cap that eventually got us the right way in identifying him.
Yeah, definitely. That was a big help. I guess the rest of the visit to that lake this morning wasn't too exciting. There was Canada geese, some mallards, just kind of picking around in the grass and in the water. But later on today, I went for a little short hike at this national wildlife sanctuary near us. And I had a couple highlights from that walk. It was a blue-headed vireo and a eastern wood pewee. And this was the first official sighting I've had of a blue-headed vireo, so that's always exciting to get one of those. But besides that, there was just a lot of crows and blue jays flying around. They're feeling especially vocal today. Lots of cawing and yelling at each other back and forth.
Yeah, that sounds on track for those guys. I've not seen a blue-headed vireo. That's pretty sweet. I've only seen a red-headed vireos in the past. I didn't even know there was a blue-headed vireo.
Nice, nice. Yeah, apparently there's quite a few different types. The head wasn't like particularly blue. It was kind of a grayish blue. If you don't really get a good look at it, you just think it's a gray drab bird, but with some white around the eye. It's kind of the giveaway. What have you seen lately, Alex?
Yeah, since our first episode, took another morning walk to our unnamed lake, and there was actually 8 great egrets there. It was pretty cool to see them perched along the shoreline, and I've not seen that many before in one go. So that was a good way to start the day. And then last month, the wife and I took a trip to the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, which is quite the name, to explore one of the trails that cross the Minnesota River. Saw a lot of barn and tree swallows darting around the wetlands. There was some mourning doves in a dead tree. Trumpeter swans flew in formation overhead, and we spotted a bald eagle gliding over the treetops. That was quite cool to see. And then we also saw a male wood duck close up with its eclipse plumage, which I didn't know was a thing or until I looked it up later. So male ducks will normally have this colorful breeding plumage, but after nesting, they molt the old feathers, and as they cannot fly during that window, the new feathers take up duller colors to help with the camouflage to kind of avoid predators. And then that duller plumage resembles the female, so it's actually harder to identify the males during that time, so that's why it's kind of called the eclipse plumage.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. I guess I knew male ducks, they tended to look a bit more dull towards the late summer and fall, but I didn't realize that concept kind of had a name and everything.
Yeah, it's quite a deep dive if you want to look into duck molding. There's a lot of information out there. But anyway, so that was cool. And then lastly, on the return leg of the walk, we heard a bird we didn't recognize making a real racket in this tree by the path. Took a bit of patience, but we looked around, found the culprit, and it was actually an indigo bunting, which felt quite fitting after our last episode.
Yeah, I'd say that feels very fitting indeed. For those who remember, last episode I had mentioned that I spotted an indigo bunting, and you expressed that you're hoping to see one at some point soon, and it came true for you.
Exactly. It's pretty sweet.
All right, so we'll move on to the next section of our episode, which is going to be the topic of the episode. To kick this off, we last episode I had asked for any suggestions from the listeners, and we got a couple sent in, and one in particular I thought might be nice to cover early on here in the show is the question was where to find birds, and so that was kind of an open-ended question. I thought initially I interpreted it as, you know, what are the best kinds of birds to look for as a beginner, um, and for us to give some guidance on where those birds hang out and how they could use that knowledge. I reached out for some clarity on how specific they were thinking, what they were thinking with this question, and what they said is they were hoping for little fun facts and tips about different birds as we get mentioned in the program. And I think that's something we'll make a deliberate effort to do for now on. But for today's topic, I decided to kind of stick with my initial interpretation of the question as for where to find birds, because I don't think either of us claim to be an expert birder, so in many ways we're beginners ourselves. I think it's something we could speak on as kind of what we look for when we're trying to find birds. And so I think one place my mind went right away for a good entry point into the hobby for a beginner is waterfowl, or like large shorebirds. And I think this might be something you have some thoughts on, Alex, as that kind of tends to be where you started.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great place to start. Generally, waterfowl and shorebirds are easy to spot and identify due to their size. Plus, you know where to find them, right? It's lakes, it's ponds, it's rivers. Any body of water larger than the puddle is a safe bet. Also, unlike the birds that kind of flit around in bushes or trees, waterfowl are usually sitting at the shoreline or they're swimming, so you generally have time to track them and get a long look at their features, which is really helpful when you're not familiar with the different breeds of duck there are. Um, for me, my process really starts with checking a map for blue areas near me. So I'm looking for water that has a path or a road nearby that I think I can get a good look at the shoreline with. If I think there is a good spot I can get to, then I'll set a path and start walking. And I don't always see anything, but it's an adventure, and you never know what you'll find on the way. Otherwise, there are birding groups online and apps such as eBird where people can record the sighting. So if you can use those for reference if you don't want to just roll the dice like I do on a random pond finding something for you.
The other place my mind went for this question is just watching the birds that hang around your lawn. It can be a great starting point. I think if you're somebody who's never paid much attention to birds, you'd be a little surprised at the variety of birds that are right around your house. For someone wanting to dip their toes into the hobby without much commitment, this would be a great way to do it. And I think you just download a good bird ID app. There's plenty of them out there. Just sit outside and just kind of look and see what's around, try to identify things.
100%. If your garden has any native flowers or bird feeders or any kind of water feature, anything that'll draw anything in, you're going to attract the local wildlife to your windows, and then you never know what you'll see.
To add on to that, if you're somebody who likes to keep track of your progress with any of your hobbies, I'd highly recommend making an eBird account. This is a site that's run by the Cornell Lab. It lets you record what birds you've spotted, and it keeps track of where you've spotted them. As Alex hinted to above, there's an eBird app, which is an interactive map that tracks your sightings. It's really easy to use, super intuitive. I wouldn't go more in depth than that as far as eBird goes or citizen science, because I think that's something that would deserve its own topic. And with that, I think we'll move on to the bird of the episode. Today's bird of the episode is the state bird of my home state of Ohio. I thought it was fitting, as last time we discussed the common loon, which is the state bird of Minnesota, where we both currently live. The bird of the episode is the northern cardinal. So not only is it the state bird of Ohio, but 6 other states: Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. So I pulled up some fun facts here for us. Originally, they were the most common in the southeast portion of the U.S., but over the course of the last 200 years, they've steadily spread north, to the point that they're now a common sight across the whole eastern half of the U.S. The males, as most of you know, are one of the more distinct birds found in the eastern half of the country. They're very bright red. They've got a large orange beak, and they've got a very prominent head crest. They tend to feed on seeds, insects, and berries. It's kind of your typical, when you think of birds, what birds eat. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, cardinals, they're popular in Minnesota. I think people really like them, and they're easy to spot and identify even when you first get into birding, so they're nice from that side of things. Another noticeable thing is their different calls. There's one that sounds like a car alarm, and you'll definitely know when you hear that one.
Yeah, for sure. You'll know when you hear it, and you'll know when you see it. It's definitely a very unique bird. It seems to be a little overlooked sometimes. Everybody thinks, just because they're so common, they don't pay attention too much to them, but they're pretty pretty. And that'll do it for us, I think, today. Thanks, Alex, for joining me. Thanks to all the listeners at home for their support. As always, feel free to provide any feedback by emailing us at featherytreasury@gmail.com. If you want any information about Feathery Treasury as a whole, you can visit featherytreasury.com. And have a good one, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Have a great day, everyone.